show with Harry Smith.
Right.
And you, in your research, probably accidentally, you came across a sad realization about Mickey Mantle's youth. Could you just briefly give us a little bit of an idea of how he grew up, and that might explain, and maybe you could lead into your meeting in Atlantic City with him?
Sure. I was a reporter at the Washington Post when Mickey was banished from baseball in '83 after signing a deal to work at the Claridge Hotel and Casino. And, Bowie Kuhn, then the commissioner, had banished Willie Mays already a couple of years earlier when he signed a deal with Bally's right across the street. And so when Mickey signed this, they called him Director of Sports Promotions, and they created golf tournaments for him to, chair, and they would bring, he'd bring his buddies in, and they did card shows. Though card shows were a pretty new phenomenon there. They did a lot of roasts. Roasts were big, And so when the press release came across my desk at the Post saying that, they were having a media day, a media opportunity, as we call it, and you could come to Atlantic City and, have a one-on-one with the Mick. And I think you got a filet mignon, a Hearts of Palm salad, and a Mickey Mantle number 7 shirt. I stood up and said to the sports editor at the time, "That's mine." And he said, "Okay." And actually, Mickey called me back at the office to say he would do it when he wanted to meet me. And I hear this voice, and it says, "Hello, this is Mickey Lipschitz." And I was just stunned, to hear this familiar twang saying that. And I said, kind of gulped, and I said, "I didn't know you were Jewish." And he said, "Let me tell you something. I learned when I first come to New York, when you're going good, you're Italian, and when you're going bad, when you're going good, you're Jewish, and when you're going bad, you're Italian." And with that, he agreed to do the interview. And when I got there, the man I encountered was not, by any stretch of the imagination, the guy that I had expected from my childhood trove of memories. He spent the greater part of the day telling profane, largely misogynistic jokes to one and all, to drinking, which in fact was part of his job. That's what people wanted him to do. They wanted him to, schmooze with the high rollers and go to cocktail parties and make people comfortable. And the downside of that for him, and his wife thought, that job was the downfall of him, was that, it linked his need to make money, because after all, he didn't make A-Rod money, with the thing that was, his, unbeknownst to him, his familial inheritance, which was alcoholism. Growing up in Oklahoma in the 30s and 40s, Bill W. was a new name on the scene, and nobody really knew about Alcoholics Anonymous, or even that alcoholism was a genetic disease, and that it could be passed down, and that if you had it in your family, you needed to be careful, because it might affect you differently than it affected other people. So Mickey had... it was kind of a setup. Every round in New York that he was offered, and everybody wanted to buy Mick a drink, was kind of a setup for him, because he didn't have any reason to suspect that how it would affect him was different than how it would affect everybody else. The statistics in when you go talk to people about alcoholism and addiction is, if you take 100 people, 85 of them the next day will say, that six-pack I had the night before, I don't need it, I don't want it. 15 of them are going to say, I need it, I want more. And that's just the nature of, the demographic of addiction. And Mickey, without knowing it, was in that 15%. And so here comes this, kid, not off the farm, which is how people always describe him. His father was not a farmer. His father was a zinc and miner and lead miner in the tri-state mining region of Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri. Here he comes to the Great White Way, and it's Manhattan society, and he's out every night, with the swells. And, baseball players were a hard drinking lot. I mean, Casey Stengel's rules for how to drink properly was to tell his players not to drink in the hotel bar because that's where he did his drinking. So it wasn't exactly a culture at that time that urged moderation or provided education. And so in many ways, I came to feel very sorry for him because he had no idea what the genetic load was that was going to doom him.
Well, and to a large degree, as you said, he became a victim of his own success. He couldn't go anywhere without somebody putting a drink in front of him. Jane, you were on with Mike Francesa. He had you on for an hour. And
no, 2. Yeah, 2 hours.
2 hours, I apologize. And the thing that amazed him was the thoroughness of the book. I grew up a Yankee fan for one singular reason, Mickey Mantle. I idolized someone that I caught the tail end of his career. One of my earliest baseball memories is I recall, like it was yesterday, kneeling down on my couch, listening to a little transistor radio, and Mickey Mantle striking out for his 4th time in the game, and the crowd serenading him with booze, and I started crying. I said, how could it be? I said to my buddy, I said, Anthony, this is the Mick. Why are they booing? He says, well, he's kind of hung around a little bit too long. Jane.
He told me, and he told lots of people, that he should have quit after 65. But, those guys in those days, they didn't have the long-term contracts. They didn't have pensions the way these guys have today. They didn't have agents. And Mickey was not a guy who particularly cared about money or was aware of how to be fiscally responsible. Rudy said if he had a wad of $100 bills in his pocket, which he dispensed liberally. I mean, he was an incredibly generous, instinctively generous man. But keeping track of it, investing it, knowing what was in his bank book, that wasn't part of the drill. And so, that was part of his downfall. What do you do, when you wake up one day in 1969 and you got nothing to do and you know how to do nothing except be Mickey Mantle? And so, so many of those guys, but him more than almost anybody, made a living being who he used to be. And that was the best he could do. And the way to do that was, he said, he got paid for going to golf course and to cocktail parties.
Jane, I just want to tie together a few things, and then again, because we're pressed for time, I know you have another speaking engagement after this, so I want to thank you for coming on and spending a few minutes with us. But Vinny in the control room, if we can go over to graphic number 4, bouncing out of order a little bit, but that's the kinetic mantle. And Jane, you break down in such detail Mickey Mantle's swing, because Joe DiMaggio said, I never saw someone that had the exact same swing from the right side as the left side. And Jane disproved that, and she went to great, great lengths. So what we want to do is we want to invite all our viewers to read this book. Yeah. Go out and get this book, because, I thought I knew a lot about Mickey Mantle. I do know a lot about Mickey Mantle, Jane, but you blew me away with this book. That was one part of it. I'm going to tell you another thing that absolutely blew my mind. I don't know if anybody knows this. We all know that in 1951, in his rookie season, Mickey Mantle ripped up his knee. We all know that. But Jane, through your research, you proved that Mickey Mantle did not have surgery in October of 51. He did not have the surgery until 2 years later, 53. Jane, that is just amazing research.
That blew me away too, to be perfectly honest, Mike. I was one of those things that, again, as you say, we all knew the story of how he caught a spike in the drain in right center field in the Game 2 of the 51 World Series, chasing after a ball hit by that other rookie center fielder, Willie Mays. Right. What I never expected to learn was two things. One, that the reason that he caught his spike there was that a groundskeeper had neglected to push the hard, round rubber cover down over the drain the way it was supposed to be. And so while he's running full out, and Casey had said, go for anything, and they use the slur that we don't say anymore, that, DiMaggio's heel is killing him, and Mickey could outrun the wind then. And there he sees, comes charging after it. He sees DiMaggio camped under the ball, and he tries to stop his momentum. And as he tried to stop, he caught the spike, and he told me that it felt like his knee went through the front of his leg. So I started trying to, get to the bottom of, well, okay, what could make somebody be in such pain that, as he told me at the time, that he actually soiled himself while, prone in the outfield grass. And I went to old trainers from the Yankees. I found one of the surgeons who operated on him in '53, who is still alive. He assisted in the procedure. He took his medical history. And what astonished me, and I was just being kind of ornery, to be blunt, I thought, okay, well, everybody knows he had the surgery at Lenox Hill because that's what he always said. But, I'll get the date. I'll say what day he had it. There was no record in any newspaper of any surgery. I went through it 5 times because I thought I was crazy. Because, hey, we all know it had to be in October '51. And it turns out what I found was a little item saying that the Yankees were sort of upset about how slow he was to heal, so they sent him to Johns Hopkins at the end of October '51, where he was cleared to go home to Commerce and told just to rest, that no surgery was necessary. And so he played on an unstable, unrepaired knee for 2 years. And it was during that time that much of the dissatisfaction that he wasn't becoming who we all thought he was supposed to be, started to be expressed. And, what was amazing to me is how much he was able to succeed in doing under those conditions, because he was playing with a torn ACL, torn MCL, and a torn cartilage. What they call the unhappy triad, a term that was coined just in the early 50 or 51 by a doctor in Oklahoma, and they could just begin to understand what it was. They couldn't visualize it, and they couldn't repair it.
Jane, it was like the triple crown of knee injuries, very fitting for Mantle. Jane, 2 other things. I don't even really want you to comment on these because there's a couple other things that really want to get to 2 of your other books, because we suggest that our viewers read these other books too, and we want to tie into those. But Jane, in this book, there's a chapter, Dr. Feelgood. We knew about Max Jacobson. He was the Doctor to the Stars, JFK, and all of that. But you go into such detail, and it's just a page turner. And just again, the research jumps out at you. Also, his tape measure home runs. You went to Washington. You rang doorbells to find out that legendary home run. How many feet did it go? Did it go 565? Well, Jane, the viewer's going to have to read the book to find out. But let me tell you, you did your homework, Jane. It was tremendous. Now,